Chair, you have all the people that you are going to have for this evening. It's past 7 o'clock. The floor is yours.
Okay, we'll call to order at 7:02, and we'll start with roll call.
Gail Linden.
Adam Wallace.
Chris Gombieski.
Brandon Weinbaum.
David Schwartz.
Jessica Steinhardt.
Okay, and approval of the agenda from April 28th.
So moved.
Second?
The approval of the agenda from today.
For today?
For today,
For today.
sorry, yep. Get ahead of myself. Approval for agenda for today, sorry, May 27th.
It's going so smoothly.
Yes. It's the holiday week.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And approval for the minutes from April 28th, 2025.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Adam? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And item number 5, matter of the corner lot ordinance introduction and setting public hearing. Hank?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, and as evidenced by the joint meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals, this has been a concern, and it seems like that we ought to really address it. It was on the priority list, but we still had to put it forward. So what it is corner lots ordinance revision. Corner lots that are platted one way and the house faces the other typically face problems all the time. Their rear yards are not according to Hoyle, and neither are their front yards or side yards. As a result, they end up, for wanting to do virtually anything to their property, they end up at the Zoning Board of Appeals. And in an effort to try to treat everybody fairly, we bring forth this ordinance. So if you have a minute here, just let me get this. Let me get this up for you. Okay, so here, this is going to show exactly what it is that we're adding and what we're changing. What I've done this evening is we've given you 2 copies. We've given you a clean copy, which represents after what it would look like, and I've highlighted the portions of the ordinance that we're changing and the terminology that we're changing. So basically what we're doing here is we're starting off with the definitions because we have to change those before we can change anything in the ordinance. So in the section 40, 2.02 definitions, we're looking to amend it to include a technical front yard. In the case of a corner lot or double frontage lot, the yard between the front lot line with the least amount of frontage on the street and the nearest point of the main building. That's the technical front yard. We've talked about that before. The practical front yard is a different animal. So what we've done here is, in the case of a corner lot or double frontage lot on which the main building is not facing the technical front yard, the yard between the front lot line with the greatest amount of frontage on the street and the nearest point of the main building, which would then make that corner lot, the way that it's facing for zoning purposes, the front of the house. So in the rear yard, we had to do something a little bit different. So if you take a look at 2, it says the practical rear yard. In the case of a corner lot or double frontage lot with the practical front yard, the portion of the technical front yard extending from the front of the building to the rear lot line. Okay, so that means that from the front of the house, like if you're facing, and the house faces the long side of the street, that from the front, which is the technical front, all the way back, then would be considered a practical rear yard from the back. So the way that this reads, and it says to the rear lot line, extending from the front of the main building, it should say from the side, no, it should say from the front of the rear building, because that's going to be the rear line, which is now going to be behind the building as it sits. Do you follow me, or did I lose you on this? I almost lost me, so I'll go over it. Okay, so the house is facing the long side of the street. The technical front yard, which is the technical front yard of the house, which actually is the side of the house, all the way back would be considered the rear yard behind the house, so that they can have in their rear yard the things that we're going to be not allowed just by virtue of the placement of that. So what would have been a side yard for them would now be a rear yard. And that's important because anybody in the back that wants to put a patio in a side yard, patios are expressly permitted. Well, where are they gonna put it? So what we're trying to do is even things out for them, and even the playing field. What I'd like to do with this is if you have any comments or questions about that, let's get them out there, because I'll present any comments or questions you have to our city attorney for revisions. If there's a way you think we can make the language a little more simplistic, I am all about that. But I also think that we have an obligation to really define this, because we're trying to give these people some equal opportunities without having to go to the zoning board of appeals. The other thing that we're trying to do by doing this is that in order to go to the zoning board of appeals, they've got to pay. So corner lots typically faced a heavier burden than regular lots did. So that's why we want to change this. But we want to make sure we get it right. Let me go down to the next where we talk about height and area regulations and exceptions, so that we can take a look at that, and then I'll tell you what I would be hoping that you might do tonight. So in chapter 40-604, height and area regulations and exceptions, corner lot fences and accessory structures. In the cases of fences, patios, or accessory structures, practical placement shall take precedence over technical placement, meaning that you can put it where it is the practical rear yard or front yard or rear or side yard, but you can't, as long as it goes, but they can't, what they can do is they can't put like fences in the front yard, in the technical front yard, because that would mess up the whole block. So what it says is, and the zoning administrator, deputy zoning administrator, in their discretion, may allow placement in the practical rear yard, except that in no case shall accessory structures or fences be allowed in the technical or practical front yard, which is also going to bring up something that I'm going to bring up later this evening that I hope to have in the next meeting. In cases of the side street side of the corner lot, accessory structures including but not limited to fences, decks, and patios. So that's the street side. So meaning if you're on a corner lot, okay, that if it's in the street side facing that, you can't have a patio. And that on that side, and that's no different than what anybody else has right now. So the difference is that in the front yard of patios and accessory structure, you can't have it, okay? So because we're declaring that to be a front yard for this, the same thing would apply. However, on the flip side of the building in the back, you absolutely can have it, because that's the only place you're going to put it, and that's what we're trying to do with this. And again, including but not limited to fences, decks, patios shall not be permitted. So that's what we're doing with this. Before I get into what we want to do next, which is the next item on the agenda list, what I would hope for is that you can go ahead and set this for a public hearing. Setting this for a public hearing does not mean that you are 1,000% set with this, and that this is gospel. If you have ideas, if you have discussion, if you have things that you would like to talk about, something you'd like to change, or something that you're not comfortable with, we should talk about that, and then I can have the adjustments made so that at the next meeting, in your agenda packets, you have a revised, if needed, copy, and then we can go from there. Other than that, certainly open for any questions you might have.
Okay. I'm 2A, the definition of practical rear yard, I'm having some trouble with.
Okay? So let's
And-
talk about it.
I mean, I agree conceptually, my point is that I'm not sure that 2A gets what we need.
Okay?
So,
What would you think we would need
Well-
to add?
I'm trying to just visualize this, and I drew a little picture here. I don't know if anyone can see this. It would be helpful if I drew it, is there like a big board somewhere I could draw this on?
No, but just,
But, so anyways, sorry.
it's a really nice drawing.
Thank you. Here's the corner,
We just turn around.
upside down L,
Okay, now
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, okay.
right? It's a shorter corner here, but that's the technical front. The front of the house faces this long arrow, right? So that's the technical side. Am I understanding that correctly, Hank?
Go through it one more time.
Okay. It's like an upside down L,
Yeah.
right? So the short end of the L, the house faces the long end of the L.
That's the practical front.
That's the practical front, and it's the technical side, right? The practical front is the short end of the L, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then the technical rear is the opposite of the technical front. Technical rear is not really a term here.
Yes, but I'm gonna
But-
pull up an aerial here in just a second, we're gonna go over this stuff.
And just to make sure, I'm understanding that when we say technical
I'm gonna-
front yard, are we talking about the actual address that's listed by the
No.
postal
No.
service?
No.
The address is typically on the practical
And the
front.
yeah.
Yeah.
Address comes from the postal
Right.
system, and it could be totally different than the platted.
Oh, yeah, of
Layout.
course, yeah.
While he's pulling that up and where.
Yeah, give me a.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to know, how did double frontage lots get into corners?
Double frontage, like you mean on one street and the street behind it?
Well, as we define here, the double frontage,
Yeah. Oh, that's corner lots, there's one frontage on one street and on the other.
oh, so you're just expanding what you're defining.
Yes.
Got you.
Yes, that's
What is,
the term.
so what is double frontage again?
If you have a lot that fronts two rooms.
Literally, the
Fronts two streets?
Corner
You
lot.
may want to then,
It's another way of saying corner lot.
do we want to then, just for consistency, carry that over in the 4604? Because we don't talk about.
I thought you were truly talking about a double lot.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
two parcels that someone bought.
Because even though it might be 50-50 and it's 140 here, they built it 140, so they've got 100 this way. That's what I truly thought you were talking about for double frontage.
No. If you think that that's confusing, let's.
I do. That's kind of where I was going.
Okay. So here, I'm gonna use this house because it's next to the house I used to live in. I knew the address. So here, this right here is the technical front yard of this lot, okay? This faces this way, okay? When you go,
Wait, that's the technical front?
no, the front, other was the technical front. If this was the way that the house faced, this would be the practical front. Let's just say that that was the technical front yard because the lot's platted off a Ludlow here. This is platted off, if this was the front, let's say this was the front door. Oh, yeah, you can see it. Say
Can
that
we-
was the front door.
Can we pull one that really is?
Yeah.
Can we pull that
Where
one
the,
on
where the, where
Concord?
the,
Yeah, what's-
Like there's
Where
one
the
on the
house-
corner
let's
of
do that. What
Concord
was
and
his-
York.
what was his
Concord
name?
and Pembroke.
You know what that address is off the top of your head?
Just go to Concord and Pembroke, Huntington Woods is an intersection.
Two-digit,
parents,
two-digit
8344
Concord
Henry.
address. Any two-digit Concord address is facing the wrong way.
Yeah, that house
Okay.
right there.
So let's do this house, okay? So this house faces Concord. I'm gonna go down here for a minute.
okay, so their front door is on Concord.
Yes, so this is the practical front yard,
Right.
that's what they have.
Okay.
This,
That was the technical.
Yep.
this right here would be the technical front yard. So there are things that, and I'll talk about that when we get to the other things, there are things, and I'll still leave this graphic up, but there are things that are gonna be in the front yard here that are in the technical front yard that he can't put, that he has here, that'll end up in his backyard, like his patio, he can't have that, even though the house next door apparently has some form of patio.
Because he can't go find the front.
But that's also their practical, though.
What?
They could have a patio on the practical side, right?
The practical
He
front.
could not have a patio in either the technical or the practical front yard.
Okay,
Because it proceeds in front of the houses next to it, it comes too far
Correct.
forward.
And it's also.
That's why you can't do it.
It's also an accessory structure, which we'll get to.
So how did the house next to it?
It was done 30
Years
years
before.
ago.
Okay.
Let's just do Google Maps like
So-
all the time in here and
Yeah,
just find
it's-
all of the
well,
code
it is.
violations.
You
So-
know, it's just one of the
So,
things.
my question is the practical rear yard,
The practical rear yard, let me show you what the practical rear, okay, so here's,
The opposite.
let me go
Should be the-
technical. Let me
He's
go
got it,
Technical first, because I'm already here. This area that's blurred out,
yep,
that's the technical rear yard.
right,
Okay? The practical rear yard, which let me go.
you may not be able to see it, but it's behind, right,
Yeah, it's gonna be what's behind this fence right
Yep.
here.
so, but this says, in the case of a corner lot or double frontage lot with a practical front yard, the portion of the technical front yard extending from the front of the building to the rear lot line.
Yes.
Isn't it?
So
Shouldn't
that
it
is
be the
this line here, that is this line here, all the way to the
technical
back.
front yard.
That's the technical, that's the
Okay.
practical rear yard.
Does that,
So it'd be
The rear
this,
ru-
So it becomes an L?
it becomes an L.
So they get the benefit of.
Well, they
basically,
don't, the benefit is just that that's a side yard, that's technically, we haven't addressed it, so that's still a rear yard. What we're doing is including this space in there, but we haven't amended side yards. What we've done is amend the practical rear yard, so they get that space that was a little space on the other side, because we haven't done anything with that, and they get this. So this house in particular, which has a very limited ground space, gets that sliver, whatever the rear setback is, plus what goes around the back corner of the house.
he has
That's
a
what-
yard on the east side of his house in carport, a fenced yard on the other side.
Yeah,
And that's his normal rear yard.
that is correct. So he keeps that and adds this sliver because he's got no way, if his house is built that way and he's got the garage or carport on that back side, he's got no way of getting it. His door is on the side that faces the neighbors. So not giving him that as a rear yard is severely handicapping the house. And the goal here would be to try to get more equity, not less.
And the then practical rear yard would not extend beyond the house?
The practical rear yard would go all the way to the
Street.
technical rear yard, all the way, and
But-
cover all that.
It doesn't come off to the street as if we're calling it, so it stops at that part of the house, like you were saying, makes an
Yes.
L, not a
Yes.
really long one.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Because you gotta give them something. These houses were here, they've got no place to put stuff. They have to go to the ZBA for virtually everything. So this is kind of why, we need to take a look at this. And this has been going on for years and years and years. And even if you don't think that the verbiage is exactly correct on here, let's have that discussion. Because if you think that there's a way to make that clearer, or if you think that there's a way to do that, that's fine. Even if you wanted to email suggestions in, just don't reply to all, send it to us as individually. So there's no open meetings act violation. I'll see that the attorney gets those, and I'll see if he agrees with the language and can incorporate it. Or if he doesn't, we'll at least have an explanation for the next meeting.
So behind,
Suggestion,
You can make any suggestion you would want, David, that's why we're gonna
capitalize the word yard.
capitalize the word yard, we could do that.
Seems like it's part of the defined word, but and then at other points we refer to the yard,
Okay,
which doesn't need to be defined, that does not.
fair enough, we can do that.
and so behind the house in the practical rear yard, they could put a patio or whatever else they wanted to with your approval.
Well, yeah, the only reason that it has somebody to look at it is because we're gonna define if that's really the practical yard before we issue that permit. So it's gonna, realistically, it's gonna be myself, it's gonna be Francesco, or one of the two of us is gonna look at that. And there's almost never a time when one of us isn't here.
Then the practical yard would also then comply with, like, they can't build a patio to exceed those 3 feet or 6 feet from the borders, right?
Well, they'll have setbacks, they can go
They
up to the rear yard, they just can't go, they don't have the same setback, like they don't have a 6-foot setback, because in most cases, That's all they got.
I mean, that house has almost no land between his backyard and Gordy Oliver next door.
Okay, okay.
So, does it,
Is
With
that-
the understanding that even though we're mentioning names here, we're not having any,
Right, I'm just
On this-
putting this in relationship if anybody knows where the house is.
right.
That's not his house, it's his driveway, but I'll keep names out.
So
Okay.
would then that allow that person to build a patio directly up to the border of the house?
Up to, in this
'Cause I don't-
case, it would be up to the fence.
Up
the
to
line.
There's a
that
fence
fence.
there
Yeah.
between the driveway and the back of the house?
Because he's got a fence there, so whatever's behind the fence isn't going to matter. And even if you put a patio or something like that, and the fence wasn't there, it isn't anything that would impinge on the person next door from using the driveway.
He has a fence,
He has
that
the
house
right
has
to
a
do-
fence behind it?
What?
Which house has a fence?
I didn't say that.
Oh.
But
the Concord
You could build
house?
it up to the fence.
I'm sorry. What?
Didn't you say you could build a patio up to the fence?
Up to the fence, yes. I thought you said vent. You
Fence.
put a patio up to the fence, yes.
and they could do that now anyways, right?
They could do that, now anyway, but there's some difference between making a walkway and a patio. But this would give them the license to actually put in a full-blown patio. If they wanted to put chairs back there, if they wanted to hang a TV on the wall, if they wanted to, put out a chimenea or, anything like that, those type of things, that would be allowed for that. Because it would be a walkway, we'd be defining their spaces, that which would house things normally found in a rear yard, is how we would go with that. So if you're okay with where we're headed with this, with the understanding you can always send me and Francesco an email if there's other questions. What we would be hoping for is a motion to put this forward to a public hearing at the next regular meeting, which would be held in June.
I think at a public hearing, you need to have some diagrams on there so people are understanding.
We're actually gonna put diagrams in this ordinance.
Okay.
There will be part of the ordinance. The thing was is that, as you know, we talked about it at the last meeting, so to just get this before you would be that, because I don't need the diagrams to take it to the public hearing, but diagrams are already in the works, because that's what's gonna help. And each definition is going to have a diagram with it.
Okay.
So
So,
that'll be helpful for people.
just from a language consistency standpoint, does it make sense to have technical rear yard called out as separate from practical rear yard to mimic what's in the front yard section?
We could do that.
So if there's an A, there's a B
Yeah.
in
Right.
both.
Right. It
Yeah,
just
why
boxes
not?
everything in.
Of course we can do that.
And then the only other question I think, and Gail and I are kind of on that side, is the double frontage lot, the definition of that.
Okay.
And I thought that was two lots that individuals had bought,
Okay.
not
So,
two street sides.
Let's have him clear that up.
I mean, my opinion is, a corner lot's a corner lot, don't call it anything else.
So let's just say.
Take it out.
Say corner
I'm fine
lot,
with that.
and we'll take out the double frontage, unless there's some reason we have to have that.
I mean, if so, then they should define it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Right.
So
It
let's-
has to be in there, then it
We
should
can,
be
we can
defined.
do that.
Okay.
Well, it used to be that the old ordinance, because it was a corner lot, by its strict definition, had two frontages.
Well,
And that's why
and that
it
may
had
be
double
that-
frontage, but everybody doesn't understand that. I truly thought it's two lots by one lot deep, you
Well,
know?
we can actually add that as a definition, and then that would help clear that up
That
as
would be
well.
perfect.
So we'll see whichever way he feels that that's gonna work the best and be the least confusing and most legally correct. Let's do that, and we'll have it back to you, along with the diagrams for the next meeting.
And then one other question on the.
Sure.
The next page, the corner lot fences and accessory structures.
Yeah,
So patios are called out as being separate from that,
right?
but are patios are considered accessory structures? Is there a reason to call them out specifically?
Patios are definitely, what they did here when they wrote this was the most common accessory structures. But the way that we take a look at the accessory structures, and we're gonna talk about that in about a minute. But the way that we tie with technical, with accessory structures, these are the most common accessory structures, including but not limited to fences, decks, patios. The reason that we're saying that is because that's in the front yard, so realistically, you're putting a patio 2 feet from the front door, from the front sidewalk. So it's a little bit different as far as what you have with that. So were you looking for us to include, exclude, or were you looking, or is this something that we should talk about on the next?
I just wasn't, so if fences are considered accessory structures, then it would just be corner lot accessory structures. And then in that first sentence would just say in cases of accessory structures.
Do you want a definition of accessory structures?
And not offer an example?
I don't know, I was just wondering, the heading, the heading is corner lot fences and accessory structures.
Right.
And then it says in cases of fences, patios or accessory structures. So isn't it in cases of accessory structures such as fences or patios?
Yeah, okay. Okay, I see where you're going. So your question would be is, in order to word this right, let me think about this for a second. In cases of the side street side, which would mean this right here.
Practical.
It would be the practical front yard. So it'd be this right here. That's the street side side.
Which is the practical front,
Which is the practical front.
and will always be the practical front?
It will always be the practical front because that's where the front door is.
So
In cases
can
of
we
practical
add
front?
practical front into this since we've defined it here? So once they understand, instead of calling it the side street, side corner?
Yeah, let me bounce that off. Let's see how-
That way it just kind of,
Let's do it and see how it reads.
okay.
If it reads better to you next time, then we'll go with it. And you should understand that at the meeting, next meeting, that just because we're having a public hearing, we'll also be able to take public hearing. There's public here tonight, so if they have anything obviously to say, we can take that too. But at the next meeting, we'll have the public hearing, we'll do that. At that point, unless there's a million things to change from what there was, we would look to recommend it with possibly a change or two or possibly no changes, to move to recommend it to the city commission, because as you're aware, the city commission is the final adopting body for any ordinance change. So it comes through you for public hearing, goes to the city commission for final adoption. So you don't really adopt anything, you proffer ordinances, and the commission approves it, or they can even make changes to it.
Hank, in the zoning ordinance, we have a definition very close to the beginning of it, of accessory structures. Should we have that here?
No.
Because Jessica's
that's-
point
that's
is
what
that
we're
you're
talking
saying
about.
some accessory structures and you're calling out others, so,
Okay, that's what we're gonna talk about next, that's the next item on the agenda.
okay.
So let's wait to do that. So-
Accessory structures is capitalized towards the top here, and it's in lowercase throughout the rest of this.
We're at the top, you mean in the bold?
No, it says corner lot fences and accessory structures, that's part of the heading, so that's fine. In cases of fences,
Okay.
patios, or accessory structures, that's the one I'm concerned with.
Okay.
Capitalized.
Yeah,
I think that should be lowercase if we're not gonna refer to the defined term, accessory structures. Or, you keep it there and you make it consistent towards the bottom, and then I think you can lose some of this language about the including but not limited to, because that would presumably be included in the
Okay.
definition.
So, let's take a look at that and see what it is. I'll get him to change this. Again, he did a lot of work really quickly with this. We gave him concepts, we gave him what we were looking for, this is what he came up with. And again, this is why we have this meeting, we'll set it, make sure you get 2 looks at it and decide whether or not you want it. The other option is you come back and it's totally not what you want. You can vote to table the public hearing till the following meeting too. So just because there's one and you set the public hearing doesn't mean you're necessarily married to it. It means that that's where we feel that we can hit that mark. If we can't hit that mark to your satisfaction, don't hesitate to proffer a motion to table based on the fact that it doesn't, it needs some more clarification. but at that point in time, we should be citing all the clarifications. Again, tonight, whatever you send me, or send Francesco in an email for this, will make it that much cleaner when it comes back to you next time. So, Mr. Chair, with that being said, if you don't have any more questions, you should open up the public participation, and then you could make your motion
Okay.
to your inclination.
Okay, we'll open up the public participation.
Guess that means me.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, public.
Thank you. So
If you want to come up to that mic, yeah.
Sorry.
They won't hear you in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, in the back, yeah. So rumors are flying in my
you state your-
neighborhood.
your
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
26028 Eller. I'm Barbara Gray. About what's happening in the former Rite Aid and the former Taste of the Orient. So poking around, trying to find a little bit of information, but haven't, so I thought I'd just come to your meeting and find
Okay.
out what.
Okay, so they will, at the end, we'll have public participation about things that are not on the agenda. So this
Okay.
is just for the item that we're discussing
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
I thought,
Yep, but
Okay.
we'll
All
come
right.
back,
This is about
yes.
this ordinance.
Yeah, we'll get there, yep,
We'll get to you.
Yeah.
Promise.
yeah. Thank you. Okay. Close public participation
For this ordinance.
for this ordinance. Yep. And,
So are we making a motion to table this discussion?
No,
to-
No.
making a motion to set public hearing for the next meeting in June. Next regular meeting.
With the
with additional-
approved,
Right.
corrections and suggestions that we made, but we'll have a public hearing that will have a new draft.
That is correct.
Okay.
So to make it formal, I guess, we would like a motion, and in this motion to approve for a public hearing for the next, with the understanding that the technical rear would be added to be consistent A and B, and the other adjustments plus the drawing.
That is correct.
I'll second.
second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. And moving on, number 6, a matter of addition to the priority list for 2025.
No, there's still 5 if you gotta go.
Apologies, I have to leave.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, what we have is, and again, this is somewhat tied into this ordinance, but what we'd like to do is we'd like to revisit the accessory structure definitions, particularly as it applies to the front yard. If you're okay with it, I'd like to make some changes, but what I've done is I've printed out for you the definitions for structure, accessory building, structures, uses, and regulations. So there are a couple things that we can do here with this. I personally would, there's 2 things. One is I'm going to be going to the zoning board of appeals, but I couldn't get to this zoning board of appeals because they couldn't publish in a timely fashion. And if I can't publish it, don't meet my legal notice requirements. So that won't go until the July meeting for the zoning board of appeals for that one. However, we do have some things that are on tap right now. So what I'm going to do for them is I'm going to stay any action on the part of the city for those things. And I'm going to, if you say that we could go ahead and consider that on the public item, I'd like to, on the priority list, I'd like to put it on the priority list. I'd also like to advance it, so at the July, at the June planning commission meeting, I could come back to you with a draft somewhat similar to this, which is a work in progress, okay? And we could discuss that, so with a list of things. So in the list of things, part of what it is that some people feel that it may be too subjective, because it says or like. So, and somebody could make a connection to this. So as long as somebody can make a connection, it could be, they want to make it less arbitrary and more defined. So ideally what that's going to mean is we're going to have a longer list of items, and we're going to have a more definitive placement as to where they could be. So right now we have that any one of 18 people could write citations for things, okay? So we want it to be it either does or does not meet the book, not subjective, whether Dan writes it, Hank writes it, Sergeant Jordan writes it, it doesn't matter. It should be the same all the way through. So this would take us a step towards that. So we'd like to go ahead and do that, and I'd have it for you at the June meeting. And again, I know this is another rush, but we seem to be getting in the middle of things real quick here, and we're actually starting to turn some work product out. So having said that, I'd like to keep the city attorney busy. And having said that, it also, I owe a couple people some emails, but what I'm going to answer is going to depend on what you say tonight. So if you, what we would like is a motion to add those definitions, to add to those definitions, review those definitions, and bring you a sample ordinance and what that would look like. Again, it'll have a strikeout, and it'll also have a clean copy. So you'll see what it'll look like. And then at that point in time, we'll go through the same process. You'll set a public hearing, which will then happen in July. And at that point, that'll go through if you have it, or, it takes some more work if you have it. But we'd like to get these knocked out this summer. But any action that comes in, we will stay the action on it. So as long as this is pending, I'm not going to start writing people tickets on an ordinance that may change. So we don't have any tickets outstanding right now, so this is a good time to do it. So if that's the, any comments, questions you might have about that, to the extent we can start to have a conversation, that's fine. If not, or you just want us to bring you some definitions and something to look at before you have a conversation, then just what we need is a motion to move it to the priority list and to expedite it so that you can have it in the following meeting.
So if you're staying any potential tickets, ordinance violations, we would then also be staying the approval of any accessory structures until the definition is
If they don't meet the
reviewed.
current zone ordinance, yeah.
Okay.
But the deal is that may change, so some people that are trying to do things or whatnot, there's two ways to do this. The planning commission angle from it is to make it a long-term fix. The other fix is the zoning board of appeals. Now, in fairness to the people, if we have this on the books as being something that the planning commission is interested in doing and interested in changing and pushing forward, then what I would do is I would not have them go to the zoning board of appeals. I, as the city, would go to the zoning board of appeals. It saves them money and we still get our definition. And then at that point in time, I would have that prior to your final meeting, which would then be in July. So, because I would go to the July ZBA before you had your July planning. So we would come with that information to you that the ZBA thought X. So that might also help you in your decision making with that. So, as they're the ones who interpret the ordinance. And that would probably be helpful that I have two residents right now with two entirely different problems that either one or both of those could solve. Or not, I mean, it may be that that's just the way that it is. But at least you would be making the decision based on having the materials in front of you to do that. Whenever things like that happen and residents have an issue, we do like to do that, bring that to you as quickly as possible. People let us know, people talk to us, and we want to continue that dialogue, and that's going to require a dialogue with you as well.
You said something about putting it on our priority list?
Yeah, because it's not on the priority list currently, so the way to do that would be to put it on the priority list and advance it.
Okay, or put it at high, and therefore we deal with it.
Same thing.
Okay.
Do you need to move anything else
Nope.
on the priority list?
This is it. Because you're going to lose this, the one that's here now, with the ordinance change for that, with the technical and front and side yards, you're going to lose that off the priority list in the next 30 to 60 days, one way or another. So it'll do that. And the goal with this is that I'm bringing these to you at times when we don't have like a ton and a half of site plans coming in. And the reason is so that you can take your time and consider these and not have to worry that, you're doing it at, 9:30 after you've looked at 6 sets of plans. So, and it gives it the consideration that it's do.
So, I mean, knowing that this is impacting people
Yeah.
daily, and I have heard, complaints from residents who have been frustrated with how code enforcement has been interpreting this, I think it would behoove us to add it to the priority list. I also think it would be really helpful, as we discuss this further, right, in the next meeting, that there's a lot of ordinances that make reference to accessory structures, and so I think understanding the impact of the change of the definition, like, it would be really helpful to see what those other ordinances are. So, for instance, and I don't know all the language at the top of my head, but there's stuff that says, right, like, you can't put an accessory structure in your front yard, or whatever.
Right.
But I think seeing where that terminology is used in the ordinances will help us make a better decision about what the definition ought to be, from my perspective.
And that's fair. So if you take a look like what we did and go back to the other one, we changed the definition, so we also had to change where it was placed in the ordinance. That's where we went to height and area regulations. So when you do one thing, you have to also go to the different areas to make sure that you're hitting everything. And then there's always a chance that you can find out you didn't get them all. But for the most part, we typically do. That's why that went in 2 places. This one could potentially end up in 3, maybe 4 different places. So because this is highly impactful. So with that being said, again, we would like to get started on this because I owe some people some emails. That's
Further questions? Open up again to public participation. Close public participation on this item. And we're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to add the amendment to the accessory structure definition to the priority list and move it to the high priority list.
And again, to expedite it so that you can have it for your next meeting.
And that's what putting it on the high priority list did.
Well, you still
Okay.
have.
All right, so
Necessarily.
motion to add the revision, the amendment to the accessory structure definition to the high priority list and expedite it so that we can review it at the June meeting of the planning commission.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, now we'll open up to public participation.
I know her question.
So I can restate, 26028 Aller Avenue in Barbara Gray. So rumors are up and down my neighborhood about what's going to happen with the former Rite Aid and the former Taste of the Orient. And I did receive something, wasn't able to come to the meeting, about the Bigby Coffee, which was fine, but now the rumors are, and that's the Taste of the Orient, I thought it was taking up Rite Aid, but it's not. And so the rumors are that there's going to be a dollar store. And I just wanted to ask if that's being
Mr. Chair,
entertained.
if I could.
Yes, please.
Okay, so to be clear, the city's not received any documentation of anything occupying the space at all, other than where the Taste of the Orient was. Bigby Coffee is hopefully getting ready to open soon. Excited about that. That's a great use for that space. The Dollar Tree came from the owner of the Rite Aid building. That was one of the businesses that he was talking to. To this day, we have nothing submitted to the city that's saying that was a Dollar Tree or what store might be going in there. Before that happens, or anything goes in that space, that will come before the planning commission. There has to be a site plan review for that. There has to be adequate parking for whatever the use is, and we won't know that until anything is submitted. It may be a Dollar Tree, it may be, I heard even somebody said a Harley Davidson showroom, dealership. But these are things that are not before the city right now. We have no documentation. So what you're probably hearing is an expanded use from somebody that was either at a meeting, heard something, saw people talking, saw a diagram somewhere or something. but there is nothing submitted to the city for site plan approval for a Dollar Tree at that location at this time. That doesn't mean that there won't be, but it means at this time that doesn't exist.
So the owner of the building would sell it, but
No.
it has to come before the city?
No, he had, first thing, that everything that comes before the city has to be verified as to the zoning and what it is. And in the zoning requirements for it, there's also parking requirements. They also, with a major tenant then, the Bigby being the smaller tenant, the subservient tenant, the larger tenant, which would be the dominant tenant, would have to take the parking lot lights. They would also have to sprinkle their side of the building based on the use. There would be a lot of things that they would have to do, and they might not have the spaces based on their floor to storage ratio to allow for the proper amount of parking, which would mean they'd either have to go for a variance or they couldn't do it. That's possibly what could happen. But until I get something in finite with an actual diagram that we can sit down and take a look at, I gotta tell you, we don't have anything. So it could come in tomorrow, could come in 3 weeks from now, could come in a year from now. And it just depends all on, what people are willing to spend to rehabilitate the property accordingly, or what might be allowed under current zoning for that. But I will tell you that under current zoning in BD district, a Dollar Tree could be allowed if it meets all the other requirements.
It would be allowed
By right,
by what?
by right,
By right?
yes.
Say more about that.
By right is what the zoning ordinance allows as a permitted use in the zone district.
Okay. And there would be no public comment?
There's
or-
always public comment.
Okay,
When it
but-
comes to site plan review, just like we have ordinances, there's public comment for everything.
Mhm.
There's public comment for everything on the agenda,
Mhm.
and public comment for everything that is not on the agenda.
And Hank, because she lives on Aller, would she get a notice?
She would get a
Probably,
notice,
I mean, I would-
everybody within
Yeah.
300 feet gets a notice.
Just like you did for Bigby.
Yeah.
And there was
I
a
get
choice
that.
for discussion at
That's why I was
Bigby.
wondering why we didn't know anything, and again, then
'Cause there's nothing
maybe
to
I
know.
didn't
We haven't
read
heard anything
carefully
either.
enough,
We
but it
don't.
made it sound like Rite Aid was gonna be the Big B, not the former Taste of the Orient was gonna be the Big B.
There were diagrams and maps and
Not,
plans.
yeah, not
So-
what I got, I don't think. So.
Well,
I-
not in
I
the
get-
letter, but at the meeting.
Oh, okay.
So there was always, and if there's plans or if there's diagrams, they'll always be out there a week prior to the actual meeting.
It's in
So-
the law.
You can come, you can
At
come
the
to
desk.
City Hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like if a meeting's on a Monday, by the previous Monday, those diagrams, plans, and documents will be available online for you to look at as well as come in and look at. A lot of people would choose to come in and look at because you can't ask questions to something that's online. So we're always here to answer the questions for you if need be.
Okay. It was just a surprise. I know, just the neighbors I've talked to, nobody wants a dollar store there. It was,
Yeah.
Rite Aid was great, if I may, Rite Aid was fine, but there were times when it was robbed and the people who robbed it ran down our street, which wasn't a delight for anyone. I'm sure if you live there, you wouldn't want that either. And there are dollar stores everywhere, and usually they're in a supermarket, this feels like more a neighborhood. We think of it kind of that way than a typical dollar store, and you don't have to go far to find one. There's one at 696 in Coolidge. There's two right across from each other at 9 in Coolidge. There's some over on Greenfield. You just don't really have to try very hard to find a dollar store, and we're rather hoping that that's not what it would be.
Again, at this point, we don't have any documentation that that's for a fact what's being proposed.
And I guess I would wonder why we would want it. Isn't there any other alternative, like what we have on 11 Mile with Monarch and the Salon? Why wouldn't we want something more like that than,
We don't own that property.
but, so we do own the Rite Aid?
No, we don't own that property.
Yeah, but,
But this property, the city sold to the people that went in there.
okay,
So that was actually city property
before it was.
before it was sold
The
to
Monarch
the
and the
to the
Salon.
studio. So that's the difference with that. the owner of the property that he has that's legally placed in the BD district has a right to rent his property to that which comes in. And you can't exclude specific businesses for that without having a legal discussion with that. Having said that, we may be putting the cart before the horse here because we don't have that as being in front of us at all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. We don't get to see the two numbers.
Hey,
That was
on the
great.
Board of Education for 8 years. I know
Okay.
lonely meetings really.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, we'll close public participation and looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Wait a second. Did we not skip number 6?
No,
That was.
That was the.
That was the
Priority list.
Okay.
accessory
That was
structure.
the priority
Okay.
list. We did.
That was just the addition of that one item?
Yep.
Yes.
Accessory structures.
Got you. Okay, I thought it was, other items also. Good.
Second
I
the
move to
motion.
adjourn.
All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.